Good evening, everyone. Mike Palmer from Know Your Rights Group and Success Coaching International with another important live video update tonight. As you can see, I've got none other than Darren Dixon from Constitution Watch with me again tonight. How are you, sir?
I'm good, buddy. And yourself?
Mate, we've been working hard again today, getting everything ready for that boot camp, but we've got lots of other exciting information to share with everyone tonight. And Darryl O'Brien's joined me again. How are you, mate?
Good, mate. Good. And a big hello to all of our viewers.
Indeed, indeed. So obviously the talk of the town at the moment is everything about this voice to Parliament referendum. Heard on the news today that apparently 2 million people have already supposedly cast their vote. Now, given that we've only got about 25 million people in the country, that is a significant number. So I want to make sure that everybody has access to the correct information to ensure that they are voting correctly. Now, I know you've been doing quite a bit of research into this. And essentially, there's really two steps to this voice to Parliament referendum, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. They're only telling you half the story. They're telling you
surprise.
Exactly. They're telling you about the advisory board that basically the voice is. So we're going to constitutionally recognise a voice to Parliament for the Aboriginals. But what they're not telling you about is step two, which is it leads to a treaty. Now, people will say, well, how will we write this treaty? Where is it in the Constitution? Well, that voice being inserted into the Constitution will allow for that. So that's fundamentally what this is all about. It's to create a treaty, and it all has to do with the land.
Yeah. Now, they're not even hiding the fact that it's about a treaty. I mean, I've read a number of articles out on these videos over the last month or so, and various people have, openly stated, the voice, and they need the recognition, and they need the treaties, they need the reparations. So they're not hiding it, but of course the media isn't talking about it openly, and they're not actually explaining what it means. And that's what people need to be aware of.
And we've heard Anthony Albanese actually deny it.
Well, of course, no surprises there.
So,
but, people really do need to be aware of this. And I showed the example on the last video update with the iceberg and what they're talking about, which is the bit on the top, but it's all this other stuff underneath that they're not even mentioning, and they don't even want to talk about. They don't want people thinking about. And I urge you, please take the time before you cast your vote to do the research. Look at what these treaties could lead to. Look at what these reparations could lead to. Look at the extra taxes that could be brought in as a result of this. And, really think, are you going to benefit somehow by voting yes? And are the Indigenous people who are out there in these regional communities, the ones who really need this assistance, are they actually going to be able to benefit from this? Because there doesn't seem to be any information out there to suggest that that's the case at all. Now, I know, and I know you love to talk about this concept of shifting the liability. It's a thing that you talk about at our live events and all the rest of it. So, how does that apply with this voice to Parliament? How are they shifting the liability there?
Well, what's actually happening is it's the British Crown who originally came here, and it's the British Crown that slaughtered and genocided a lot of the Aboriginals. Mm-hmm. And also that carries on to the Australian Crown in regards to, for example, the stolen generation and various other crimes that happened against Indigenous.
Yep.
Now, all of a sudden, that liability is being shifted to the Australian people, and we're being made to pay. We're now responsible for it. And by voting yes in this referendum, you will claim that obligation and take it away from the British Crown and the Australian Crown. It's those governments that are responsible. It's not the people who are here and now on the land of today.
Now, speaking about taking on the obligation and paying, everyone's saying, if you don't vote yes, you don't care about the Aboriginals and the Indigenous people, and you want to see them starve and suffer and all the rest of it. But the truth is, the reality is, there's something like $4 billion that's already provided for towards the Indigenous communities. Now, of course, as we all well know, the ones that really need it the most, those out in the regional areas, of course, they don't ever see it. But where's it all going, and how is this voice to referendum, if it were to be approved, how is that going to change anything, and how are these people in these regional areas who need the help the most actually going to benefit at all?
Well, it's more in excess of $4 billion, way in excess. Wow. And what's happening is there's many Aboriginal agencies and corporations that are working towards helping the Indigenous on the ground, but they're not seeing any of this money. They're not actually receiving any help. Anyone just needs to take a walk in Darwin and outside of Darwin to see the effects of what the government are doing and how they're not assisting anyone. Now, this is the thing. What is going to happen? What change will actually happen where that money will reach the Aboriginals on the ground? If you can't do it now with a plethora of Aboriginal agencies and corporations, the main Aboriginal agency's got 1,200 or 1,300 staff. Wow. It's all getting sucked up in administration. That's where the majority of the money is going. Now, there needs to be really a royal commission into where that money is going. Absolutely. And putting a voice into the Constitution is not going to change the distribution of that money. It's going to stay the same. This is the issue. Now, they're going to try and implement more taxes, and they're going to make the Australian people pay for the crimes of the British and Australian Crown. So be careful what you wish for, people. Be careful what you wish for.
Well, more importantly, be careful what you vote for. That's what it really comes down to. Now, I know you've been doing a bit of research into this as well, and you've got some thoughts on it also. So, by all means, feel free to share with some of our viewers what your take is.
Well, essentially, we've got a situation where the additions to the Constitution will essentially create a new head of power under Chapter 9, Section 129. And that new head of power will allow then this Aboriginal voice to bring about changes and proposals for changes that may in fact be in breach of the Constitution and the laws that are inherited here. So of course that's all that's going to really achieve is it's going to lock up our court system because the High Courts is going to be bound up in constitutional challenges to all of these claims being made under Chapter 9, Section 129 relating to the heads of power and the new claims of new laws they want or changes to the current system that we have, and in particular the land ownership and altering our estates in fee simple and the inheritance that has essentially brought about not only wastelands but there's also an implication that this could mean new taxes on estates in fee simple. So of course this is the legal minds in this country are against this referendum clearly, because it doesn't take much to see through this whole process that the Labor Party is trying to implement. And of course, the elephant in the room really comes back to the fact that they have not fully disclosed what it is that they're really proposing to do. Yep. This is a danger. I mean, the ballot paper itself is a problem because it hasn't got the proposed change that people are allegedly being asked to vote yes for in order to give this Labor government carte blanche power where it doesn't exist at the moment. Yes, they have the power to legislate relating to Aboriginal people, but of course legislation is tamed down according to the powers under Section 51. But we really have to be very careful. We have to ignore the propaganda machine that is really heavily pushing this yes vote. We haven't been informed properly. On that basis, we need to say no. Traditionally, Australians, 48 referendums since 1907, 48 referendums, we've only had between 6 and 8 yeses. So Australians have always been traditionally cautious about what government propose, because traditionally government hasn't been fully transparent with what they really want.
And even less so now.
And even less so now, but of course one of the most strongest referendums we've ever had in our history was in 1967, when 90.77% of Australians said we need to remove Section 127 and the word Aboriginal from Section 5126. And the idea was that the Australians wanted predominantly the Aboriginal people in the Torres Strait Islanders to be treated the same as everyone else.
Yeah.
And this is what we are. We're a multicultural society.
Absolutely.
If we move forward and say yes to this proposal, then we've just flowed directly against this multicultural society.
Dividing everyone back up again.
It's just crazy. Then we may as well call for a vote to have a Chinese voice or a Pakistani voice or a Croatian voice. Why not? You know, this is the danger that we confront. The more people that vote no, then we are stepping back into the realm of common sense, which has just been lacking so much in our society the past couple of decades, more so now in the last few years. So Australia, please, vote no. It's common sense to vote no.
Absolutely.
We really need to step back and call these people out for creating this referendum. It really has no substance whatsoever. It shouldn't have come up to this point. They shouldn't be testing us on this vote. There should be at least a 12-month lead up to a referendum, clearly pointing out to everybody in this country what it means to change the Constitution regarding any particular point that we may need to put across. It has to be fully transparent. It has to be bipartisan. There needs to be no division in our parliamentary system. There should be complete support. When they go for a referendum, it should be a slam dunk yes on whatever we're voting for, and that's only because informed consent has been exercised.
Yeah, there's a little known treaty called the International Covenant on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. It was ratified into law in Australia in 1975 in the Racial Discrimination Act. And it places an obligation on the Australian government to repeal any laws that could be considered racist. And Section 5126 is one of those particular laws, because they can write laws for special laws for any race. So that's creating a division between the community. The government are trying to tell you, if you don't vote yes, that you are a racist. Well, I say it's the government who are racist, because it's the government who are asking you to create division in the community, division within Australia, and we need to walk together as one in this multicultural society that we do actually live in.
Absolutely, definitely. And I think you raised a really good point before about the potential for litigation and court cases. And the government's already openly admitted that they have no idea what actual can of worms this could open from a legal standpoint. And as I'm sure many of our viewers are aware, as I'm sure you guys are both aware, the wheels of justice move very, very, very slowly, especially at the higher levels, Supreme Court, High Court, where these cases obviously, would end up. So, on any point of law, on any question that came up, it could take many, many years before that's ultimately resolved. And presumably there are going to be many, many challenges on many, many different points of laws. So, we could be looking at decades of legal uncertainty in this country, because the government still doesn't honestly know what the true ramifications, of this voice referendum really are.
And this is the words head of power are very important words. Section 51, Section 52 of the Constitution designate a head of power for our parliaments to create legislation. They don't realise that this new chapter and this new section will create another head of power. And we need to be very cautious of that, because we know when we look at Section 51 and the 39 subsections and the Section 52, essentially we've seen nothing but abuse.
Absolutely.
And like Darren said quite correctly, Section 5126 should have been further modified, really, in 1967. we don't need any form of discrimination in this country. Our law shouldn't be reflecting that, and especially a law relating to a head of power.
Yeah.
So we really need to say no, and we need to call these people out that have actually called up this referendum and are putting this test on all of us, hoping that we will react emotionally.
Oh,
and this is what we don't need. We don't need an emotional reaction. We need a learned, we need an informed form of voting to take place between all the people in this country. And we're not seeing that, so just on that basis alone, vote no.
Yeah, and I've said it many, many times in these videos, you know, very simple. If you don't know, then vote no. And there are just so many unknowns, there are so many uncertainties that I urge people to just vote no. It is so, so important. And as I said, unless you can specifically, honestly, genuinely see some real world results for you and or the Indigenous people that are genuinely in need, and you can somehow see something that we're all missing, that this voice to Parliament is somehow going to achieve, then you really need to vote no. And again, with literally just 1 week left, in fact, not even, just under 1 week left, please, this is so, so important. We do need everybody to please share this video around as far and as widely as you can. We are going to put it up on YouTube at the conclusion of this. It'll also go up, obviously, on our Facebook videos page. It'll also go up on our BitChute channel as well. And we do urge you, please, let's just share this message around far and wide, so those who might still be, you know, sitting on the fence, or they might be uncertain, or, you know, God forbid, they're thinking of voting yes, at least they have access to this information and they can make an informed decision. And look, we saw this through COVID. You know, as soon as anybody tried to question the science, it was always, oh, no, trust the science and get emotional and get fearful. And they're doing exactly the same thing with this voice. They don't want actually people to ask sensible questions, do the research, find out what this really means. They want to tell everybody, if you vote no, you're the racist. Okay, and get everybody into this emotional, you know, place. And that's what we need to separate ourselves from, and just look at the facts, look realistically, look calmly, and say, okay, what's this genuinely going to achieve for those who need it the most? Now, before we finish up tonight, I know you've got another point that you want to raise, because of course this was all brought about by Anthony Albanese, and there is quite a significant issue with him currently sitting as Prime Minister. So please share that with our viewers.
Well, I'm sure everyone's aware of ministers that have an allegiance to a foreign power cannot sit in Parliament.
Mm-hmm.
And recently, in the last few years, people
Yes.
have been removed for having dual citizenship or having allegiance to other governments or monarchs. Well, late last year, Anthony Albanese went to the coronation of King Charles III. He swore an allegiance to King Charles III in his capacity as the British monarch.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Australian government have failed to even write an act to create the title for the king to adopt for use in relation to Australia. So there is currently no King of Australia.
Great.
Now, he's sworn an allegiance to a foreign power, and there's a little-known case from 1999 called Sue versus Hill, where Heather Hill was sitting in Parliament, and she was a British national, and she swore her allegiance to the Queen of the United Kingdom. And she was removed from Parliament for this very fact, exactly as what Anthony Albanese did when he attended the coronation late last year.
Now, I know the fact checkers are going to jump on this and try and claim, oh, all this Queen of the United Kingdom and Queen of Australia, it's all been debunked and it's all been dealt with before. And then they'll try, but when Anthony Albanese was sworn in, he swore allegiance to the Queen of Australia, so that, that nullifies anything that you're saying now. But he went out there and publicly did this in front of basically the whole world, because the whole thing was televised.
100%.
So there can be no doubting that he's done it. There can be no question as to whether it was the King of Australia or the King of the United Kingdom. The Sue versus Hill case that you mentioned is very, very clear. The monarch of the United Kingdom is the monarch of a foreign power.
Exactly.
And
the High Court have already said that the Queen of Australia and the Queen of the United Kingdom are two independent constitutional entities. They are separate. They are independent of each other.
Yeah. So I know the fact checkers are going to try and get onto it, but again, as with anything that we cover on these videos or in our events or on our radio shows, go and research this for yourselves. Go and look up the, it won't be hard to find where good old Albanese swore his allegiance to the King. I'm sure you can find the media clips and the news clips on it. You can also go and look up the Sue versus Hill case. A simple online search will you'll reveal the links to that, and you can go and read it, and we recommend that you do, so that, again, so that you understand this information for yourselves.
But the key point is, where is the title created by the Australian government for the King to adopt for use in relation to Australia? It simply doesn't exist. The only one that exists is the one for Queen Elizabeth II. Right. So there is no King of Australia.
Absolutely. So on that bombshell, we are going to finish up tonight. Again, we will be back, of course, on Tuesday evening between 8 and 10 p.m. For our next live radio show. Of course, those are completely free to listen to between 8 and 10, and that's daylight savings time now here in Melbourne. So please be aware of that. Again, they're 2-hour shows, so we can go into a lot more detail than we can in these short videos, and of course, they're completely uncensored. So we can go into a lot more of the nitty-gritty with those as well. So make sure you tune in on Tuesday night. Thank you to Darryl for your input for all of our viewers, mate. Much appreciated.
Pleasure.
And to Darren, and make sure they visit your website, constitutionwatch.com.au, for all the juicy information that you've shared with us tonight, plus, of course, much more.
And I put this out to any law officer to come and charge me with sedition, because if there was a King of Australia, I've just committed seditious activity, but there will not be any arrests.
There you go. Big call. So we'll leave things there. Have a fantastic week, everyone. We'll talk to you on the radio show on Tuesday night.